Welcome to the Night Club, guys. It's your host, the Night Wrencher. I just picked up the 650 Race Demon double pumper carburetor, and I picked it up for $225 on OfferUp. And I decided while I was tearing it apart, I'd go ahead and make a companion video showing what to look for when you're buying used carburetors. Like I said, I just paid $225 for this 650. Normally when you buy Holleys like cores, like let's say you were picking up one of these carburetors on Craigslist, OfferUp, Facebook Marketplace, there are specific things you want to look for, and let's go ahead and go through them. Normally, most people say don't buy a used Holley carburetor, go ahead and buy new. The quality control is better, the materials are better, and that is actually not true. They had a bunch of quality control issues with modern Holleys that the old ones, whether they did or didn't, they've already been proven through the years, and they're already seasoned components. Anything that could have gone wrong with them probably already did. When you're buying a used Holley carburetor, there's actually a few things you should really look for when you're purchasing, or let's say you're at a swap meet, you're on OfferUp trying to get a new carburetor for your build, or maybe something that you look forward to building into something better. So the first thing you want to know is the size of the carburetor, what carburetor it actually is. If you're looking at old school Barry Grant Demon carburetors like this, you're going to see either a number or some sort of marking right here by the secondaries or the primaries, depending on which one it is. On this particular carburetor, this is set up on the primaries. On my 625 that has a choke horn, it's the numbers right here in the back. So if it's got a 6, it can either be a 575 or a 625. If it's got a 7, it's probably a 750. And if it doesn't have a choke horn, it's some sort of Race Demon. It'll either be a 650, a 750, but I don't think they made 600 and 575s without the choke horn. But if they did, go ahead and let me know in the comments below. Normally, for used Holleys, I'd pay anywhere from $20 to, at the most, $100. And that's, if I'm paying $100 for a used carburetor, it better be perfect. And I've made the mistake of buying carburetors that have been less than perfect for $80, $90, $100. So what you're going to want to look for is the basics. Go ahead and look over it, right? You want to look through the carburetor, make sure everything functions, make sure the primaries open up all the way, make sure the secondaries open up all the way. You're going to want to make sure that there's no broken legs, because these pretty much, unless you know how to TIG weld and you can mill the bottom of it after you finish welding it, you really can't fix these. You're going to have to buy another base plate, and good used base plates are really, really hard to find. You're probably going to end up having to buy a new one if yours is jacked up. You have to look at the throttle shaft. As you guys can see right here, part of it is actually broken off. The holes are a little elongated, and if you look right here, when you try to actuate the throttle, you can tell, let's see if you can see that, but the shaft in the middle is not moving, and the little foot where you're actuating the throttle is. And so what will cause this, if it's been overused, maybe they put like really heavy return springs and it's been applying too much pressure. Maybe it's been dropped and maybe that's how it broke. The only way to fix this moving like a throttle shaft is you're probably going to either have to tack weld it around here. This is very easy material to destroy, so you got to be super careful if you decide to weld this. And you got to make sure it's straight, because the accelerator pump does ride on the back of this. And on this particular carburetor that I have over here, the throttle shaft has been repaired, but I do have a little bit of resistance or interference from the accelerator pump arm that's right here, because this isn't straight. So I'm gonna have to straighten this out before I go through and sandblast it and powder coat the end of it. On this one right here, you can tell that it's had several years of use. Aside from the broken arm, it doesn't look like it's damaged in too many ways. For the secondary side, you're going to want to make sure that the little arm that connects the primary to the secondary side is there, because some people like to take them off for whatever reason and don't put them back on. You're going to want to make sure all the hardware is there, like the throttle stop screw is not there. All of that costs money, and you can be like, okay, well, that's only $5, that's only $6, that's only $1, but you have to have it shipped, and you got to pay the shipping, and it just becomes a big mess if you try to buy a bunch of these old carburetor parts online. It might not show up, it might be the wrong one, you know, things like that. You want to make sure what you buy is as complete as you can possibly get it. Aside from the superficial stuff that you can see right there, make sure everything is functional. You're going to want to go ahead and take a good look at the main bodies. So right here, I've got a 600 double pumper main body. You can see that these are just straight leg boosters. Everything's good with this carburetor. It's got a mechanical choke, and everything's good, right? Well, not exactly, because if you look at it like this, you can see that the choke horn has already been dipped in right here, so they probably dropped it, smashed it. If you try to strain this back out, you will crack this right here. I have actually used the carburetor as is, the way it is right here, with the mechanical choke when I'm off-roading. If I want to richen up the mixture, if I'm at an off angle, I'm not getting enough fuel, I will go ahead and close the choke. It doesn't sit perfectly flush, but it does get the job done. You do want to look at that as well. You also want to make sure that none of these orifices right here are actually drilled out. You're going to want to look very closely. If the metering blocks are on there, you're going to want to go ahead and take some hardware with you. If they don't want to let you open it, you should probably walk away, because they're either trying to hide something or they're really protective about their items. If that's the case, you probably won't be able to haggle too much on these older carburetors. Another thing you should really look for, and it's going to be a little tricky to see if the base plate is still on it, but go ahead and crack the throttle open and look at the bottom side of these boosters. As you can see, the two on the primary side, they look like they have a chunk missing. It's been like that for a while, because it actually looks like it's a factory thing. It doesn't even look like it's fractured, but believe me when I say that it's not a factory thing. They're supposed to look like this, perfectly round and everything, and these are just not supposed to be like that. And even if it was a factory thing, there's no reason why one side would have a crack toward the top and this one would have it to the side. So those basically, they're ruined boosters. They're going to ruin how fuel gets atomized inside the throat, and you're probably going to need to replace them anyway. So you're going to want to pass on a carburetor with broken boosters. You're also going to want to grab the straight leg, down leg, annular boosters. You want to go ahead and grab them with your fingers and just wiggle them back and forth. If you have any movement whatsoever, just walk away. It's about $80, 80 to 120 bucks to have the boosters redone on a carburetor, which ends up costing more than the carburetor. While you're moving the boosters, take a look at these air bleeds. A lot of people like to drill these out when the carburetors aren't running right. The first thing people do is they take drill bits and they just start drilling these things out. You don't want to buy a carburetor that's had a drill taken to them. It's detrimental to the way it performs, and unless you go through and you drill them even bigger, maybe I don't have it here, but maybe you go ahead and drill it out, install some brass plugs, and then drill them out to your personal specifications. You don't want to mess with carburetors that have holes drilled into them. That being said, some other people like to drill holes like this one that's right here. You can see that somebody has went ahead and drilled holes on the primary side. That is, I talked about this in another video, it's a band-aid for when you can't get your carburetor to idle with really big cams. And your carburetor is not a 4-corner idle. Usually if it's a 4-corner idle carburetor and it's got a pretty big cam, you can go through and square the front and the back evenly, and you can get enough fuel and air in there to get it to idle. If it's a 2-corner idle like this carburetor right here, and you need more air, more fuel for the given amount of camshaft that you have, drilling some holes in there is an option, but you got to know how to do it. I personally wouldn't. I just tend to not use 2-corner idle carburetors if the application calls for a 4-corner. It's just not a very good idea. If you're in a very specific regulation, let's say it's a 2-barrel only, whatever, then you only have to work with the primary side, then sure, go ahead and do whatever modifications you need to get this thing back on the road. The next thing I want to show you guys is try to make sure that the base plates aren't very crooked. You probably won't be able to do it with an eye yet, but sometimes you actually can. If you see any kind of warpage, like for example, this one's got a little bit of warpage right here in this leg. If you go ahead and you just tilt it and you just kind of angle it down, you can see that the left side drops before the right side does. You probably have some sort of warpage, a little bit of a problem here. If it's not too much, when you tighten it back down, it will flatten out. If it's like a banana, it's probably not usable. It's probably been severely mistreated, and it's not something you want to mess with as well. You want to take the correct tools when you're messing with carburetors to make sure that all the components inside match what the carburetor is on the outside. I mentioned that this one was a 600 double pumper, and you can find out what exactly it is by looking up these numbers that are right here. This one you can't really see because of the lighting, but this one's a 4776-2. So you hop on your phone, you go on YouTube or Google, and you type in 4776-2, and it'll tell you it's a 600 double pumper. It'll tell you all the specification that it's supposed to be. If the main jets are different or they mess with it a little bit on the inside, it's usually okay. But if you grab a metering block and any of these orifices have been messed with, for example, the idle feed restrictors, if they look like somebody took a drill to them, if somebody started messing with the motion bleeds, this is an aftermarket one, but if you're grabbing a stock style one, let's see, which ones? I got a lot of these. Okay, this one. For example, this one right here, you wouldn't be able to tell. This looks like a perfectly stock looking metering block. It doesn't look like anybody's messed with it. It looks like it's pretty good, except I know for a fact that I messed with it because this is the one that was in our Street Avenger 670, and I actually pulled these from a 28 to a 32 so we can get our 383 to run correctly at part throttle. After which we finished testing it on this one. We put the original one that was on it, which was a polished one, pulled this one off and put this one back on the shelf. We did the same mods to the polished one that we did to this one, and it's been running good ever since. But you wouldn't be able to tell. So sometimes, even if they're factory original, you are going to have problems with getting it to run right if it's been messed with, and a lot of times you can't really tell. Does that deter you from buying used carburetors? It really shouldn't, because if anything, for the individual components and their value, a lot of times you can turn a $20, $40, $60 core into a really good, well-performing carburetor. Also, when you buy cheapy carburetors, you can also experiment with your own tuning, do your own thing on these carburetors that you wouldn't want to do with something a little bit more expensive. You can practice on these, and if you can get it to run good, then you can go ahead and practice it on these. 600 CFM carburetors are good for tons of horsepower. You're good, probably 400 horsepower with the 600, and it's probably going to run flawless. So don't be scared of trying to run a 600 when your builder or whatever says, no, you need a 650, a 750, a 780, and 830. Don't be discouraged. A 600 will be able to run your car just fine. Maybe you're going to be lacking a little bit on the top end, part throttle performance, and everything that's important for a daily driver. You're probably going to be able to tune yourself with something as cheap as something like this. I really seem to like these older carburetors. I feel like it's a very strong material. I like to work with them because it feels it's a very solid, very old school. The castings are really nice compared to the newer ones that I have, and I just like to play with them in general. That's why I collect so many of it. Every once in a while, I buy something fancy like this, but you don't really need something like this, especially if it's just a daily driver that you plan to drive around. Whatever you decide to build for your engine, that is basically your decision, and you should do what's best for you. I'm just trying to guide you in what process you should take when you're deliberating buying or not buying a used carburetor. So that's about it for this video. I will see you guys all in the next one. Night Wrencher out.